currently on the line with Michael Gilas. He's another musician that reached out about the interview session. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Michael Gillis. I'm currently an artist, a musical artist, and I've had 3 Billboard charting hits songs so far, and thrilled to be here, by the way. Appreciate it, Alex.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. Let's go ahead and get into the history of how this all started for you. Tell me about when music exposed itself to your life. When do you think you kind of gained a further and deeper connection with music?
When I sort of got the bug, you mean, that kind of thing? Yeah. I would say when I was when I was a kid, and I mean, music was a big part of my life. Music was important to me. I enjoyed music. I love listening to, albums from people, and all kinds of different music. I can't just say that I like one genre of music. I mean, I'll go from everything from hip hop to Frank Sinatra, if that's the spectrum, so to speak, to hard rock, to, all kinds of R&B. I mean, I love music. I just really enjoy music. So it's just a big part of my life. So it's been with me I since I was so small. So I can't put an exact time on it, but music's been part of my life forever, really.
Okay, perfect. So talk to me about once you kind of made that connection, realization that music was going to be there for you. How did you begin the participation process? Did you start learning an instrument, or did you go down like the poetry route? How did that begin for you?
Well, all of my friends were playing instruments, and I was actually going to school, this brand new school, kind of in a tangent here, but I was going to a brand new school, and I didn't have any friends, and I went over to my friend's house from the old school, and he was playing guitar, and he said, you got a really good ear, you love music, why don't you start playing, And since I was kind of down and out about the new school, and I didn't have any friends, I came to my mom and said, listen, I want to kind of take guitar lessons. And she was kind of reluctant, yeah, kind of how mothers are, But I convinced her to start playing guitar, and I took to it immediately. And within about 6 months or so, I was getting pretty good, and I found a friend of mine at the new school, and they were playing in a little band, and we actually formed a little band, started playing all over Long Island. That's kind of where I grew up. So, and that became it was kind of a stroke of luck that I guess in a way, but guitar has been a big part of my life. I can play the piano somewhat. So I'm sort of self-taught. I mean, guitar and piano are this very similar in many ways, if you kind of know the piano. But guitar is my instrument, and I love that. And I've tried to play like the great guitar players, but I find my way around it, write songs on it.
Okay. And with that being the way that you started to explore it, what was kind of the vision at that age? Was it just you wanted to be a solo singer-songwriter, or did you envision kind of a grander aspiration?
I don't really ever thought of a grander aspiration. When I got to college, I found a friend of mine who sort of started showing me how to write songs. He was an English major, and had never really written songs before. So he kind of said, this is kind of how you write songs, and I could write melodies. And then we started going to the studio and started recording ourselves. So I kind of was able to write the music, and later on, I sort of figure out, oh, that's kind of how you write songs. You keep working them over and over again. You keep going over them, and you kind of get a title, and so I've sort of figured out how to write songs. It's a process. It's not easy, I will tell you, but that's kind of how it then evolved from the guitar to writing songs. But I never really thought of myself as trying to become a Billboard artist. I didn't think about that.
Okay, that's great. So, what came after that? Once you did kind of find that comfort zone of what the type of stuff that you wanted to make and the songs that you were writing, what were kind of your next steps there? Did you start looking for a band to fill out your lineup, or were you comfortable just going out there doing it by yourself? How did you take those next steps?
Well, the next step kind of happened in a very strange way, in that my friend really didn't feel, or whatever, I'm not sure. We just sort of went our separate ways. He went off, and I really was kind of lost at that point. And I kind of left music. I really didn't believe in myself. I didn't think I could get a record deal. I didn't think I could produce songs myself. And I kind of went back east. I left California actually and went into business. And alongside, when I would always go on the road and I would travel, I take my guitar, I try to get into studios. So I kind of lived a different life. I lived the life of this guy in business, and then a guy who was hanging out with musicians and playing. I'd even fill in once in a while in Atlantic City for some people here and there. I'd fill in little stuff like that when I could. But I was always trying to write and figure it out. And somewhere along the line, maybe in the back of my head, I knew this. I was going to try to do this full time. I don't know. Maybe it's just an unconscious, subconsciously sort of a thing. But I kind of thought maybe at one point in my life, and then later on I did, and I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yeah, so that's kind of the perfect transition to kind of follow that concept. I imagine through all of that, you were out there kind of doing shows while also writing material, just kind of get your feet wet and get a sense for like how the industry functions. But once you kind of had that experience and that drive and the motivation to continue to pursue that, tell me about how that billboard exposure had an effect on you.
It happened in a freaky way. 4 years ago, I was horseback riding, and I fell off a horse. I broke my neck. I know it sounds just it's an incredible story, really. And I mean, a centimeter either way, I'm paralyzed or dead. I wound up in the trauma unit here in San Diego. It was brutal coming back from that surgery. I mean, if you saw me today, you wouldn't know it. But I made a full recovery. But it was just incredibly brutal. But during that time, all I had was music. I couldn't function. I could just barely swallow. I couldn't move around. I was just really in a bad way. And then, you pop in those, those pain pills, and that's a whole nother boat, and that was really tough. So I kind of understand trauma and almost addiction at the same time, But I started writing songs in my head because I couldn't play the guitar. I'd broken my right wrist too, and I'm right-handed. So that was I was eating food with my left hand with my fingers. So it was a mess, and I was so depressed. But I started writing songs in my head because music's always been with me, and slowly kind of got better. And music kind of pulled me out of this dark hole because at least I had that to look forward to. And I found a producer here in San Diego in a weird way through a mutual friend. His name's Alan Phillips. And I showed him my first song, and he said, we really got something here. And then that particular song actually went on the World Independent Chart, hit #1. It was called This Is the Last Time. And then I did another song with him called Let's Get Back to Us. And that went independent world chart #1. So then I got a call from this guy named Stephen Wrench out of the blue. And he said, I think we could do this on American Billboard. And I started writing more songs, and I started recovering from this tremendous trauma that I'd been through. And that's a story in itself, and how I kind of pulled that out of this hole I was in. I'm depressed, very depressed. And before you know it, I went to Nashville. I met a guy by the name of Kent Wells, who produces Dolly Parton and Steven Tyler, and I think Stevie Nicks and Reba McEntire, a whole ton of people. And he produced my first song called Working with the Rain, and that went #13 on the adult contemporary chart. It also holds the record for the most number of weeks by an independent artist in the top 20 in history. And then I did another song with Kent, the vocals called Kent High Beautiful, and Michael Garvin, who produces J-Lo. And he's done a lot of hit songs. I was very fortunate to have him, along with Alan Phillips. And then we just finished, right now, is a song on the charts called Me, You in Miami. And that's headed up the charts as well. And Alan Phillips and Brian Kennedy, who's pretty famous, he worked with Rihanna and Chris Brown and a whole host of other people. So I've been pretty fortunate, along the way to have met all these people from this just incredible moment. I mean, if you'd seen me 4 years ago, you'd say this guy's, as they say, 1 foot in the banana peel, 1 foot leaning left, kind of a thing, and he's in big trouble. Yeah, yeah, really. And he's in big trouble, and I was, but somehow, I don't know how, a voice in my head said we got to get up, and not only did I get up, I got myself to Billboard, which is no easy feat.
No, that's an amazing accomplishment. Congratulations on that. So now that you have found that level of success, tell me about where this is going for you. What do you want to see in the next 5 or 10 years? Your career to grow to.
I wish I could predict the next 3 months. you know, uh, I'm, the way things go in life, things move so quick. I think we're looking now towards doing another video. We've got a new single coming out in January, first week of January. We already know what that's going to be, and then a LP or EP actually will be released. I think January. We're going to have a bunch of songs for that. We're working on them now. So kind of thinking along the lines of, again, staying on Billboard and coming out with a new single, new songs. And we're looking at possibly trying to get a record contract. That would be really amazing. And, building from there. I really couldn't say 5 years out. Who knows? You know what I mean? But maybe for the next 6 months to keep this momentum going would be really fun. And I wanted to tell you something. Coming back to music. Music to me is freedom. I love music, and I love all kinds of forms of music, and music is a great connection between people. It really connects, and when people connect through music, it's really beautiful. I really love it.
All right, yeah, that's a great message as well as kind of a realistic perspective. You never really know how participating in the music industry is going to come at you and what is in the future for you. The way that just like scouting and crowds work, you never know who is out there watching you. So it's crazy, especially nowadays. The way that like social media makes communication just like lightning fast. Like everybody's communicating all the time, so things just blow up out of nowhere.
Absolutely, and that's the tricky part. They're still trying to. You just can't have You got the greatest song in the world, but nobody will hear it. And maybe you don't even have the greatest song in the world, but it goes viral. You're right. Things have changed so drastically, and that's really the tricky part of this business. It's sort of like how you figure that all out, and we're still trying to figure it out. And it's not an easy thing. I have a team of people. It's not just me trying to understand. I mean, I'm just a songwriter and singer, guitar player, but you need a lot of people going, well, I think we should try this and try this. It's pretty tricky, really. So there's a lot to navigate.
All right. Well, so with all of the experience that you have working within the industry, you mentioned you have a team of people behind you. Tell me a little bit about where the motivations come from. What are some of your favorite memories you have that keeps you engaged?
Yeah, well, it keeps me engaged is always that connection to music. I mean, when I went through that whole thing with the neck, I had some really dark, terrible moments when you just don't, even when the music was climbing. I remember when they said to me, I debuted at number 21 on the adult contemporary chart. And that's a pretty big debut. And it was like, yeah. And I was still kind of feeling kind of down about the neck, and I wasn't particularly feeling very well. And had, I just have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Motivation's a tough thing, but I think for me is I always reach down and say, okay, today's maybe not, so great, but tomorrow's going to be better. And we keep pushing on. And music, the next song and next this, and that's what keeps me going.
All right, perfect. Yeah, absolutely. I'm right on board with you. I feel that in my bones as well. So tell me where people can find you. Where can they check you out and follow your journey?
Uh, I'm on every platform pretty much. Spotify, Apple, Amazon. I'm everywhere, as they say, and hopefully, and as I start to grow. But I do want to say this to people out there that listen to your show. Maybe come away with a connection. I hope. I know a lot of people out there have suffered or are suffering. I've been through it myself. And I tried to bring something to the music, like if that guy can do it, maybe you can too. I'm not saying you're going to be on the Billboard chart, but maybe you can lift yourself up. Everyone goes through these terrible experiences of life. I think we all do. Where I think the one common thing is, bad things happen to good people. and that's a tough thing, you know, and everyone's searching for this connection. You know, I think we're just getting further and further away from it, you know, and, you know, I see it more and more and more. And the more I go out and see people, the more I see people want a connection. It's just that, how do we get there? And maybe music is the connection. I hope. And I hope some if people come away and listen to my music and say, hey, I connect with that guy. That's great. And I appreciate that.
All right, perfect. So I always like to give the people I'm listening to the opportunity to put out their last word. So, what is another message that you want other people to hear?
It's just a message that I said, that basically I hope people find a way to connect, you know, in this world that's so, so difficult. It's seemingly, like I said, through social media and all these quick fixes. And, you know, you know, the other night I was watching Netflix, just to digress on this, and, you know, there's a million choices. And you start this and you start another show, you start another show, you start another show. I mean, that's what it's become. And hopefully, like I said, music continues to unite people. I think it does, you know, and I hope that some little way my songs are out there for people too. And I hope that, like I said, I hope there is a connection. I really do. Thank you, by the way, for this show.